Yeah, let's get into it. Today, we talk about the economy, stupid. It's one of those old expressions, right? It's the economy, stupid. I'll tell you why this conversation is important because I think we get so locked into the politics of our time. Who's doing what with whom, who's winning what, who's losing what, who's into the White House and who's out of the White House.
Just one thing I would like to just chat to you about is, okay, so we're talking about fiat currency and the probability of inflation and so on. I grew up in Zim. I discovered the whole issue of the inflation, everything that you're speaking of.
Finance Minister will talk about the deficit. What? I know what it is, but for the,
Catch VTTV hosted by Vusi Thembekwayo this coming Thursday at 4 p.m. Brought to you by Just Bomb TV.
Hello, family, and welcome to another installment of VTTV across all of our social media platforms. We're streaming on IG, on Facebook, and YouTube, and across all of the platforms fairly soon. We're going to be streaming on LinkedIn too, so we're really looking forward to that. Yesterday, I had a fantastic conversation with MQ. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We really went into this idea of innovation, invention, market discovery, communication. It was a cool conversation, and I can't recommend it enough. The conversation is live on our YouTube channel. So my recommendation, if you didn't catch it yesterday, would be that you go and check it out. Catch it, watch it, and especially if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, manager, leader, you'd really enjoy that conversation. The other thing is our podcast is doing so well now. It's unbelievable that we're just a month into the podcast. For those of you who don't know, the VT podcast is live. So please feel free to go on either Google Podcast, Apple Podcast Tunes, and all of the podcast platforms, including Spotify, and there you can listen and enjoy the VT podcast for free. Just subscribe and make sure that you're a listener. Right, today is a conversation I want to have. We were due to have it day before yesterday, I want to say. Or was it yesterday? I can't recall. But that's the kind of week that it's been. And it was the day before yesterday, I remember, because I remember what I was wearing. We tried to have the conversation, and there was just technical issues. So I said to the team here in studio, it'd be really great if we can have the conversation using the studio facilities. Today, guys, I really want to go in and talk a bit about mental health and wellness. Now, I just want to pause here for a minute. This conversation is going to be difficult, and it's going to be difficult because by its very nature, mental health and wellness is not yet a conversation that's been popularized. So there are a lot of you watching this conversation who are going through a lot. If you're a business owner, the latest numbers by FinFind show us that 43% of SMMEs have closed down due to the COVID lockdown, right? That's 43%. To give you a sense, guys, that's 1 in 2 if you aggregate it. 1 in 2. And those are the ones that have closed down. Additional to that, there are those that didn't close down but had to retrench 80-90% of their staff. Additional to that, there are those that didn't close down, have retained some of their staff, but are paying them a fraction of what they were paying them before. That's the first thing to consider. The second thing to consider is that we have it from the data that we've seen record levels of applications for liquidations and sequestrations of businesses over this period of time. So there's a lot going on. And if you've never received a summons, you just you don't really know how this thing of life works. There are a lot of you experiencing that for the first time. I want to tell you, I've lost count of how many times we've had litigation issues and how many times we received summons. So I've built up the emotional stamina. When it happens, we brief it to our attorneys, and our attorneys take care of it. But there are a lot of you running businesses who don't even have attorneys on record. You don't have attorneys retained. You don't know how to handle these things as and when they happen, right? And that's a big part of what then feeds into the mental stress. On top of this, you've got cash flow issues, and I'm talking specifically to the business owners now. You've got cash flow issues. If you're employed and you went through a period where you were earning a fraction of your salary, your costs didn't drop. So money coming into the household was less, yet the costs were exactly the same. And that affects a whole host of things. It affects your ability to pay for your kids' school fees. It affects your ability to pay for your medical aid. It affects your ability to pay for your car. It affects your ability to go to the local grocery store and buy the stuff that you want to buy to feed your family. So for those of you watching this conversation who've been okay, I want you to recognize that you are, without question, in the overwhelming minority of people. Most people are battling. Add to this what this means in terms of our lives every single day. I saw a stat today. I can't recall the source of the stat, but we're now beginning to see upticks again in applications and discussions for applications to appear in court for divorces, as well as what they call settlement agreements for people who are separated. So the point I'm making, it's tough. Relationships are under strain, people are under strain, businesses are under strain, societies and communities are under strain. Just right now, go to your social media and go and check what's trending. I promise you now, whatever's trending is not positive. There was an incredible young lady, I saw the video, albeit I saw it late, who is a medical student that needed 471,000 Rand to pay for her fees within a 24-hour cycle. Otherwise, she wasn't going to be allowed to graduate, and social media rallied around her and they raised the full 471,000 Rand. That's a beautiful, incredible story. It didn't trend. What is trending? The stuff that's trending is all the negative stuff. It's the negative conversation. It's all the conversations about racism, all the conversations about bigotry, all the conversations about gender-based violence, you know, whether or not a judge should have a religious opinion, or even an opinion about a vaccine. So we're caught in this really negative cycle of negative conversations. The most important 4 inches in your life is the space between your ears. I'll say that again. The most important 4 inches in your life is the space between your ears. It's the stuff that happens in your brain. And a lot of you are under a lot of stress, a hell of a lot of stress. So one of the things I do, and one of the reasons I'm able to cope with stress, is because I don't deny it. There is such an incredible power to admitting to yourself what you're going through. Admitting it to yourself. Don't deny it. Don't pretend it's not there. Those problems are there. Those issues are real. And there is a power in admitting those issues to yourself. There is even greater power in admitting to yourself that you don't know how to solve those issues. And here's why that's important. The minute you recognize that you're going through something and that you don't have either the emotional, intellectual, or wisdom tools to deal with the situation that you're dealing with, immediately you start looking for the places where you can find that. And that's the conversation I want to have today. The conversation I want to have today is a segue into, so what do you do, where do you go when you can feel yourself under stress, under pressure? There is no such thing as an achiever who doesn't face stress. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a life without challenges. It doesn't exist. Some of the wealthiest people I know have had their worst year this year. So if you're having a bad year, it's not you. It's not a reflection of you. This is so important for you to understand. It's not a reflection of you. It genuinely is a reflection of the time. It's the market that we're in. So I've asked my good friend George to join us. George is the business development director at White River Manor. And I posted on my social media, some of you would have seen it, I went and spent 4 or 5 days at White River Manor and I just disconnected. We had come out of a very difficult lockdown period. I'd had to make some really, really difficult business decisions. And I felt like I didn't want to take that energy into the rest of the year. But I also knew that if I stayed where I was, it wasn't going to work. I needed to remove myself and go to a place and just completely disconnect. And I hit up George, and he runs White River Manor, and I went and spent some time there. So the work they do is really, really amazing. And what I wanted to do is just have George come into this conversation, and let's have a mental wellness conversation. Let's just have a genuine conversation about where everybody's at and what everybody's going through. So I wonder if we can bring George on screen now. George, how are you doing, lad? Are you well?
I'm excellent, Vusi. How you doing?
Excellent. Thanks for joining this conversation, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on.
You're in White River at the moment? You're in Mpumalanga?
I'm at White River Manor. And I must say that, this place has a magic feel to it, a magic touch to it. And just, it lends to exactly what you were talking about in terms of people finding that resolution to the strain and stress, because it gives them the ability to disconnect.
I want to start first, if I can, George, with the dirty word. That dirty word is rehab.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in society, when you have been rehabilitated, right, people tend to look down on you. It doesn't matter what you've been rehabilitated from, right? So I just want us to take a step back and talk about the importance of how wellness infrastructure works to rehabilitate human beings and bring them back into society, right? And I think we have genuine, honest work to do to normalize and get people to understand the value and importance of wellness and rehab centers, right? So there is, without question, a stigma attached. No question about it, right? And so a lot of people either don't seek the help, or worse, they seek the help, but they do it quietly in their own little secret space because they don't want it to be perceived that they either can't cope with their issues, or they're weak, or especially in today's environment where we have such high levels of, in particular, toxic masculinity. Vusi and George must have all of the answers to all of the questions they don't even know exist yet, right? So I just want to start a bit about the way the facility is set up, and I know you're going to ask me some questions about my experience there, but I want to understand the way the facility is set up, the way the programs are structured, and the people watching this, how it is that you guys have tiered and geared those facilities to benefit the average person.
Okay, well, I mean, to start, the whole concept of White River Manor was developed with mental health and rehabilitation in mind. When Giles and Janine and Jerry put this program together, they realized that there was a market for executives. They realized there was a market for professionals, for people out there who were struggling, but were too fearful to expose themselves and to become completely honest about the realities of the challenges that they faced. I think, if I can look at one benefit to like the COVID reality, is that for the first time in history, mental health and well-being is actually being viewed as a necessity rather than a stigma. And I think that stigma has been changed over time because of the amount of people, as you brought up the divorce rate, you brought up the faltering businesses, you brought up, the world is facing stresses that they never knew that they were going to be challenged with, and have no solution or no resolution in how to overcome these. So they're sitting in a space where, they're saying to themselves, I'll just tough it out. I'll just tough it out. I'll push through, I'll persevere, and I'll survive this. Reality is they're not. What's become real is the concept of burnout. And burnout has been what, if I could say that we're treating something more particularly that our clients are inquiring for, it would be around the concept of burnout as a whole, because there are 5 stages of burnout. Burnout runs in the course of the first being the honeymoon phase, where you get this task, you get this objective, and you're all excited, you're fired up, you're ready to go. I want this, I got this. And there's this passion, and there's this energy, and there's this, kind of like hoorah kind of attitude about, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get this, I'm going to achieve this. Once this starts to become slightly overwhelming, it moves into stage 2, which is the onset of stress, where people start to lose the inability to focus. They start feeling dissatisfied in their job. They start to lose, certain physiological elements like the ability to sleep soundly. Their productivity drops, anxiety increases, and they start to get to the level where they start to shudder and wonder how they're going to manage and how they're going to cope. The next level would be complete and total, would be burnout, which is the development of an escapism mentality, which is, I got to run. I can't handle this. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what I'm going to do. and they become debilitated in their mindset and how they're going to focus. And what this does, and what is being seen in terms of how this has affected businesses, is that your top tier executives and your higher level people who aren't taking the time to readjust and refocus on themselves don't have the capacity to lead in the manner in which they have been doing so because of the stresses they're under. I mean, it must be catastrophic for a person of, that has 10,000 employees to have to look at 5,000 layoffs. It must be, traumatizing for them, and it must leave them with sleepless nights. It's got to break people. And I think it's at that stage where most people start to realize, maybe I need to do something. Because the next phase, which is the fifth phase, which is the collapse. And that's, when it's called habitual burnout, when people reach chronic sadness, depression, burnout syndrome, chronic mental fatigue, and then they start looking for other ways to try and survive the problem.
Absolutely.
So White River Manor as a whole realized that the state of the world as we know it at the moment is completely changing. Not only for the executive professional, but also for anyone experiencing the common stresses of modern day life. And this can have a major effect on their general health and wellness. So the goal of White River Manor was to provide a sanctuary, in essence, a place for you to come to, where you can disconnect from that world, where you can take the time to focus on yourself, where you can get a breather from the world and reassess and restore balance to mind, body, and soul, because that's what people are lacking at the moment. They're sitting in the space of, I've just got to pull through a little bit longer and I'll be okay. But the little bit longer is expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding to the point where they reach that level of collapse. And at that point, we're looking at a whole new level of potential mental issues that can come out of this or be developed from it. So if people were a little bit more receptive to the concept of catching this a little earlier, they would definitely find a more valued channel in getting in a much quicker fashion.
So one of the things for you to think about here, George, and this is my approach. So this is precisely why, and it's not a performance secret, if I'm to be honest, right? It's because, and the reason it's not a performance secret is it's not a secret. I share it with people openly. And here's my approach. My approach is, don't wait for Rome to burn down. It's not, 100%. This is not rocket science. And so I think a lot of people wait for the cataclysmic event. They wait for I've had 2 burnouts before, so I know what a burnout feels like. The very first burnout I ever had, this is a true story, I was 27, 28 at the time. I was 27, 28 at the time. I was weighing about 124, 125 kilograms. And the reason that was because when I was younger, I used to weight lift heavily. I became quite bulky, as you do. Then when I started working, you weight lift a bit less and a bit less and a bit less and a bit less, and then not at all. And you get into the professional world of work, and it's Puza Thursday and Beer Friday and take clients out for golf on Saturday. And before you know it, now you're consuming alcohol. And I was very young, and I had a lot of authority and power. I was an executive in a large, multinational. I had a big portfolio of work to do. This is a true story. I was on, I think it was an express airline from Joburg to Mpumalanga in the Nelspruit. And we took off on an SA Express airline. We landed on the other side, and something said to me, dude, you're not okay. I think it was Express or Airlink, I can't recall. It might have been Airlink. And something said to me, dude, you're not okay. I was like, whatever, right? I remember the young lady in the plane saying, you may now disembark, right? I remember getting up and, pulling my bag from the top thing and walking out of that very narrow kind of walkway, the aisle in the plane. And then I remember waking up. And apparently what happened was, as I was going down the stairs, my body just shut down. Lights out. Finished. Pelile. It literally went load shedding. And I fell onto the ground. They came and picked me up. They took me inside the airport. And when I came to, I started vomiting. But like relentlessly vomiting. Now recognize I'm on the earliest flight that day. I hadn't been eating properly. I remember I hadn't been eating properly the day before. So you're vomiting and there's nothing to vomit. So what happens is you start losing all of your water, you lose all of your electrolytes, you become weaker. And I immediately called a client. I was meeting with a client of mine at the time who was the CFO of the South African Social Services Agency in Mpumalanga, a guy called Casper Mnisi. We're still connected, an incredible human being. I called him up. I said, dude, I'm not going to be able to make the meeting. I'm not feeling well. He said, that's fine. I booked myself on the flight back, came back, landed, went directly to the doctor. And when I got there, the doctor said to me, you just had burnout. Put a drip. And that was the first time I experienced it. Now, as I've grown, I know the signs. I know what my body does, right? I start picking up the signals and I go, okay, so when I don't sleep at night or I toss too much at night or my brain is too active at night, that's a sign that something is going wrong, right? When I start getting nervous twitches, that's a sign that something is getting, because what my body's trying to do is to externalize all of this pressure and all of this stress that it's facing. So I raise this for a particular reason. Most people wait until they crash to get insurance for the car accident, right? And the conversation we're having is, how do you drive in such a way that you can push your body, the car in this analogy, to its limit of performance, but that you don't crash, right? So tell me a bit about the way you guys have set up at White River Manor with some of the programs that you've got, and then I'm going to hand over to you to ask me some of the questions that you had structured for this conversation.
Okay, so White River Manor was developed with a holistic wellness program in mind. If you look at the majority of wellness centers in the world, it is more based on the physiological element. So you come in, you go through an array of spa treatments, you get fed well, you get some rest, but you don't focus on what's most important. And that's what I think differentiates us from the rest of the facilities out there, is that we have decided that the psychological element is as important, if not more important, which is why our motto for the facility is the big balance of physical health and mental well-being, which means that both levels of that need to be incorporated. So when you arrive at White River Manor, you're taking into a beautiful facility. The place is aesthetically incredible in terms of nestled in a 100-year-old garden, magnificent accommodation, an executive chef that prepares your food, a spa on site, excursions and activities that are very unique to give you a break from the norm and to give you an opportunity to go out and see some of the most beautiful places in the region, and simultaneously go through a therapeutic process where you look into those issues, where you delve into the anxiety you're feeling, where you delve into the causes of your burnout, where you look at, where these issues stem from, what they've come from, how they've developed, and then you start putting coping mechanisms in place. Yeah. In order to make sure that by the time you leave, and when you leave here with an aftercare plan, it's something that we give each and every one of our clients is an aftercare plan. And this is the plan that you need to follow if you want to maintain. So what are your triggers? What are your warning signs? What are the things that you need to watch out for? What are the things that you need to be aware of in order to make sure that you don't get yourself into this situation again? Because, the biggest and most problem that we face is the inability for people to express their vulnerability. Sure. And I think that is one of the biggest elements of what needs to be discussed, is that I am not superhuman, that albeit an alpha male, albeit, head of a Fortune 500 company, albeit somebody that is a top tier executive, you're still human. You still have a point and a level where too much becomes too much. And because there's this stigma that if I admit vulnerability, I'm admitting weakness. They don't want to do so. Wow. The answer is actually quite the contrary. To admit vulnerability, it's an unhealthy space for you to be in. So the objective is to come into White River Manor. We run 7, 10, 14, and 21-day programs. Yours was a bit shorter. And I want to ask you about the length of stay when it gets the time of questions, but that's because we brought you up because we wanted you to experience the facility. But we feel that the minimum is 7 days for you to actually be able to get to the point where you can address the issues that you're facing. Yeah. Because the psychological mixed with the physiological, as I said, we have the full gym, we have all the amenities that one requires to find, physical well-being. We also have added in all the therapeutic processes, whether it be group element, whether it be individual sessions with a clinical psychologist, psychiatrist, all of these things are under one roof, so we can give you a holistic approach and a holistic solution to the problem.
I gotcha.
So that by the time you walk out of here, you're whole within yourself again, you found balance within yourself, and you're ready to go back out with a fresh perspective as to how I need to relook my current state of affairs in the world.
Sure. What was the question you wanted to ask me about my experience?
I've got a couple for you.
Go for it.
But let's start with the first one. And you know, in terms of the therapeutic element of the program, most wellness centers, as I said, usually focus on the physiological element. You had 2 sessions with a lady named Dr. Mahta Rao.
She's phenomenal. She's amazing.
And I wanted to ask you what your opinion was of those sessions, and how insightful was that, and what were the benefits that you received from seeing her for those 2 sessions?
So first, give Mahta my regards, because I have a lot of time and respect for Mahta. She really is amazing. And you know, just for everybody watching this conversation, to paint the picture for you, Mahta's office is in like a dungeon cellar looking thing. So you descend down the steps into, you know, this little dark room with like old, but I mean, this is no joke, old cigar lounge furniture, really low chairs that you can sink into, the deep leather chairs, and she sits across you, and then you just start having a conversation. I think, one of the things I was saying to you earlier is I've learned not to wait for the burnout before I take the break. And so what that means is I'm able to take breaks more frequently, but the breaks don't have to be as long, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is I come into the conversation with a very clear understanding of what the questions are to which I don't have answers. And so I think a lot of people don't do that work first. So the work is, so actually, what are you battling with? Like, what are you really battling with? Okay, so you in a relationship and things are not going well. What's not going well? And how is that thing? See, this is what people don't understand about stress. And I love the word stress. You know, if you take a piece of elastic, right, and you pull it, there is a point beyond which that piece of elastic begins to pull itself back. That resistance level. That's precisely what stress is. It's you stretching your capacity beyond what is natural. And so there is a natural tendency to want to rebound to what is natural. But the comment I was making is, so I spent some time with Mahta. I thought that was cool. I thought the sessions with her were really amazing. And Mahta's interesting because she doesn't have answers. She just knows how to get you to ask the right questions. And I think a lot of us have to do that work. So here's a good question. This is a phenomenal question, right? Great question. Okay, so Vusi, you're a high achiever. Where did you learn that? Where did you learn to be a high achiever? So you go back. You go, well, I grew up here. I went to this school. I was top of my class. And okay, so you were top of your class. And what happened when you were top of your class? Well, I won this award. My parents were happy, etc. Okay, so actually, you learned that the way to attract adoration and love from the people you love was to be a high performer. That's why you're a high performer. And so what happens in your life is when things don't go according to plan and you don't live up to the monicum of being a high performer, the stress element is you thinking that means people are going to see through you, they're not going to love you as much, and those relationships are not going to be what you had hoped for. So you're looking at the same element, but rather than saying, I'm a high performer, which is an identity thing, I think I'm a high performer, you start saying, why am I a high performer? What is it about me that is driven to perform? And here's the reason why that's important. It's important because if you're not clear on what the driver is, you're not going to be clear on where you're driving to. And a lot of people watching this conversation are not clear on what the driver is. Mm-hmm. Why do you live where you live? Why do you drive what you drive? Why did you get the qualification that you got? Why are you in the relationship that you're in? Why are you friends with the people that you're friends with? Why? If you're not clear on what the driver is, you're not going to be clear on where you're driving to. And when the destination is not forthcoming or the path becomes difficult, it's very, very hard to take a step back and try to understand what the drivers are.
Brilliant. Absolutely true. So the next question is how important is it as an alpha male or a high performer to admit vulnerability and challenge the mentality of I don't need to look after my mental health and wellness because I got this?
Let me tell you something. One of the most important things I learned in my session with Marta was that everything we say about who we are, we have learned to say about ourselves. See, you and I are born a blank slate, which means the way we move, the way we talk, the way we walk, the way we love, the way we live, all of that is learned behavior. It's learned, and you learn it from the people around you, the society you're in, the family, you learn it, right? So even this idea about being an alpha male, I'm not sure it's codified in DNA. I think it's codified in socialization. Say that again. Even the idea of being an alpha male is not codified in DNA. It's codified in socialization. Society teaches you what is an alpha male. It teaches you what is an alpha female. It writes the script on how an alpha male should move, how he should think, how he should walk, how, And so, and a lot of it is socialized in such a way that if you're not smart, you won't even pick up that you're being indoctrinated. I'll give you a great example at this. Who are the characters in movies that win? Like if you watch, Wall Street, Gordon Gekko, Greed is Good. Watch The Wolf of Wall Street. What does Leonardo DiCaprio's character do? Watch Godfather. What does Don Corleone do? Watch Scarface. Watch Judge Dredd. There's all of this archetype of what you should be like. Power, strong, answers to all the questions, never is. And so you learn this stuff, and you're not even aware that you're learning it. And when you get to a point where that behavior doesn't yield the results, that's really when the problem kicks in. So for me, to answer your question, is simply this, that being alpha is not about having all of the answers all the time, right? Being alpha is about remaining teachable to learn the answers. That for me is what an alpha truly is, right? If you think about group socialization, think about the way wolves exist. Like the alpha male in the wolf pack is not the alpha male in the wolf pack because he's the strongest. He's the alpha male in the wolf pack because he's the one that learns to adapt, and every time the wolf pack is faced with a problem, he's got a new solution to it or an updated solution for it, right? That's the fact that he can defeat the other males is a consequence of his ability to learn. It's not a consequence of his natural kind of ability to be stronger, right? So it's very common if you look at a wolf pack, for instance, to find that there are wolves in the pack much bigger than the alpha male, but the alpha male leads. You see this in human experiences too, right? I mean, Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't exactly a big guy. He was 5'2" and probably weighed under 70 kilograms. So it was his attitude that made him the leader, that made him the alpha. And a big part of that attitude is just about remaining teachable. So there is one thing I would say to anybody watching this conversation is the humility to learn and to remain teachable is an important part of how you switch that mindset from wanting to be right all the time to recognizing that learning is a part of being an alpha person.
I think that's so important for people to realize. And I think it's so important for a person like you to be able to portray that to people because not many people are willing to admit that. Again, it comes back to that fear of this stigma that's attached with mental health and wellness.
Yep.
The reality of what we face right now, I mean, 124,000 cases of COVID in the US this morning alone, the chaos that's going on in the world, the unemployment in South Africa, the amount of divorce and separation agreements that are going on. These are all results of people not being able to manage the challenges that they're facing in their life. And instead of doing something about it, they're just collapsing and saying, you know what, I give up. But there is a solution, there is an answer. And there is a way through all of this. And that's what I think people need to understand is that you need to open yourself up to the possibility and the acceptance that help is something that is required. And once you're willing to accept that help, it's teachable, as you said, because at any point where somebody thinks they no longer need to learn, they've lost. You are always learning. You are always wanting to, to gain more knowledge and grow and expand.
Sure.
And I think, one of the problems we face as a nation right now comes back to this ideology of, I can handle it. I just, I don't need to do anything about this, because look at how far I've come in my life. Look at the accomplishments that I've had. Mm-hmm. If I've managed to accomplish all this, how can this, little setback take me away from getting to where I need to go, or getting to the place where I want to go? And the reality is that people are starting to go, oh my God, you know what? I'm not going to be able to survive this unless I do something about it.
George,
now that led me into go ahead.
No, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was, in light of COVID, unemployment is, at an all-time high. Businesses are closing down. Do you think that if company directors, owners took the time to come to a wellness center like White River Manor before things collapse, they might be able to curtail some of the problems that they're facing and find ways to maintain their businesses and get things back on track, rather than trying to manage it at a level of productivity where they're functioning at 15 to 20% as opposed to 80 to 90%.
So just a final thought for you on this. I will answer your question this way, that there is a reason when you have a car, it goes in for a service. It's because there is an understanding that anything that works must be replenished, right? And it doesn't matter which tool or machinery you're using. It has intervals where it's pulled out of production so that it's replenished. The human body is no different. So for me, it's even bigger than whether or not you are high profile, high power, or have heavy responsibilities. It's if you're a human being. I was saying to somebody the other day, if I have a 10 million rand problem and I drive past a traffic light and there's a guy standing there with a board who just needs 10 rand to feed his kids, in his mind, his 10 rand problem is just as significant as my 10 million rand problem.
100%.
So, and the reason that's important is because we often misunderstand quantum for significance. That the quantum of my problem is not the same as yours doesn't mean it's immaterial in my life. It's, in fact, quite the inverse. It's just as material in my life. So, George, before I let you go very quickly, how do the guys watching this conversation get a hold of you guys at White River Man? I know that I'd put up a post before and shared some of the details, but maybe you can give us a URL and a place where the people enjoying this conversation can go.
Yeah, people are more than welcome to contact us. You can Google White River Manor or White River Wellness, and we are 100% readily available. Our contact details are on the site. We have a Facebook page where you can link up to, which directly messages us. And we will immediately get back to you in terms of our one of our team. We have a 5 to 10 minute response time in terms of getting back to anyone that wants to come in. And the other thing that I need to mention is that one of the beautiful elements of White River Manor is that we individualize the process per person. You don't come in here and here is your program. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. We will hand tailor the program according to your specific set of needs. So we get as much background information as we possibly can about the individual, what they're struggling with, and how we can help. And then we put a program together for them. And I think that is key, because one of the things that we all need to realize is that everyone is unique in their own special way, and everyone has a unique way of dealing with things and digesting things and thinking things. So to go in with this concept of one size fits all doesn't exist with us.
Sure.
We have a phenomenal therapeutic team. We have a phenomenal operational team. And the last question I wanted to ask you was just in general, how did you find the facility? How did you find the overall experience? And what were your thoughts on us? And then if you give me 2 seconds just to show a couple of pictures, I'd like to see that, because for us, it was an honor to have you come out here and a pleasure to have you come out and see what we do. Because I think by far we're the most unique in the country, and definitely one of the most unique in the world in terms of how we've developed this program holistically. And I think that's what people need to understand, is that you need to come in for a one-stop solution. And that's what we believe we offer.
Got you. So maybe the production team can see if they can let you share some of those pictures now. And it'd be great to see if we can have some of the pictures. Look, I mean, to answer your question, as the production team do that, I enjoyed it. It was great. The facilities are genuinely 5-star, fantastic facilities, great villas, great layout, great look. So I enjoyed it, and I for free can say to anybody watching this conversation, you don't go for a holiday, but it's pretty damn close. It's pretty damn close to kind of what a holiday would feel like and what a holiday would look like. Of course, there is the elements of the work that happens there, so you've got to continue to do the elements of that work. But again, can't make the recommendation enough. Just generally make sure that you take care of your own wellness. Cool. Thanks, George. Appreciate your time, brother. Go and have an amazing Friday. And don't forget to hit me up when you're out in Joburg so I can take you out for a cup of coffee.
One day you're actually going to have that coffee with me. I'm going to hold you to it. All right.
The last time I saw you, you and I were hiking up a mountain, so it'd be good to do something on terra firma, as it were.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Vusi.
Cheers, lad.
And I appreciate you as always. And once again, thank you. I appreciate you very much.
Cheers, lad. Love to the team at the facility. Cheers.
I will pass it on. All the best, man. Keep well.
So that's it, guys. Look, this is not a conversation for me that's driven by engagement. So I'm genuinely not worried about how many people are watching this conversation. I am worried that those of you watching this conversation take it to heart. There are a lot of things that we do for engagement on VTTV, a lot of content we bring you where we try to drive up engagement, try to get you excited, get you enthused, but this is not that. I just want to quickly say the following things. Number one, vulnerability is not weakness. Recognizing where you're vulnerable is a source of strength. It's not a source of weakness. High performers are high performers because they address their vulnerabilities. You can't address what you don't acknowledge. Right? Vulnerability is not a weakness. Number two, life has seasons. This is why some of you dumb cops don't listen to me. Stop sharing your private life on social media. Don't be a dumb cop. Love lives here. Who cares? You guys are going to make me start talking like Ntate Tuso. Listen, it's called a private life for a reason. What are you going to do? Are you going to share pictures of every person that you date? Every person? Love lives here. Meet my boo. Tag at boo 1.3. Hi, man. Rona with your boo 1.3. There are so many of you that have bought into this nonsense that for a private life to be happy, it must enjoy public affirmation. That's bullshit. Your private life is your private life. Don't post holidays. We don't want to know which boat in Dubai. We don't want to know which forest in Kenya. Just go to the forest in Kenya. Enjoy the giraffes and the zebras. Go to the boat in Dubai. Go stand at the top of the Burj Khalifa. Enjoy! Don't tell us. Hey, lo, Nama. And I'm going to tell you why you mustn't tell us. Because life has seasons. In the Bible, it talks about 7 years of feast, 7 years of famine. Life has seasons. If you share your successes with us, we're going to start inquiring when there's failures around you. Love lives here. How many of you have posted images of the people you love 1 week, the next week you're announcing a separation? It's your private life. You don't stop feeling the obligation to explain every element of your life to the public. Just the last note on this, then I'll make my third and final point. Somebody asked me the other day, I posted a picture of a young lady, an incredible young lady who's just qualified as a medical doctor. And somebody posted a comment on Facebook and they went, how come I've never seen you post a picture of your wife? And I responded to them by saying this, she's my wife. She's not our wife. But there was a far more insidious point there. And here was the point. We have normalized sharing what is not for public consumption so much that the public feels entitled to you sharing it. Now people feel entitled to knowing where Vusi lives, what Vusi drives, where Vusi works. Listen, I'm a public speaker. My work is public. My life is not. And if you can learn to draw those boundaries, you're going to go a lot further and you're going to have a lot more peace. That was the second thing I wanted to share with you. And then the third and final thing I want to share with you, and then we'll end this conversation, was this. There are some of you who have people around you in your lives right now where things are not going well. Be there. Don't be an asshole. Because there are a lot of you out there as well who are assholes. Somebody's lost a job. And rather than help, you're the one talking on WhatsApp groups and skinnering about the person whose life is not going well. Just you wait. Just you wait. Goes around, it comes around. Eh? So just be there. Be a nice person. And every person you meet is going through a struggle. Just be nice. Do you know what the sum total of the cost is to your pocket for being nice? That much. 0. Just be nice. Be a decent human being. All right. That was our live conversation today. I hope you guys go and have what is going to be, I'm sure, an amazing weekend. Guys, it's now been confirmed I've been hit, with the second wave, so please be careful. Wear your masks, sanitize, social distance, and all the rest of it. I love you lots. Be kind to one another and have an amazing weekend. Cheers.